Nano Machine. Bai, Ang Hongweolja. Chapter 346. You Will Help Me. Part 1. The locations of all factions across Ulen were scattered, so each messenger from the palace arrived at different times within the 2 weeks. The first messenger to arrive was at the Ulen clan's base, or the Naking region. The one who went there was the eldest son of the emperor, Zhu Taiyun. He was known as the most likely successor of the throne. With Zhu Taiyun's visit, the Ulen clan had been partying for 3 days straight. Many beautiful women danced while musicians played happy music. As the feast went on, the Ulen clan leader Yan Bukang sat beside him. "Your Highness. Please drink more." "Ha ha ha. I'm so honored to be treated like this." Zhu Taiyun was very pleased to be treated like this by the leader of the giant faction of Ulen. Inside, there were also the leaders of other clans, or the 17 leaders of the Ulen clan. But not all of them were here. One leader, or the leader of current Sorum Temple, was not here as he was a monk who did not join feasts. At the same time, outside the hall where the feast was being held, a beautiful woman was talking with one of the monks wearing the Flower Mountain clan's clothing. "We still haven't got all the spies with us. I'm not sure if it's okay to party for 3 days straight. Miss Jiggle. I understand your concern, Elder Peng. But it's better to leave a good impression on the possible future emperor too." These two were the second strategist of the Ulen clan, Jiggle Sohi, and sixth leader Peng Chungwen. After they returned from the demonic cult, they had been working hard for the past few months to find spies hidden among them. Unlike the demonic cult that was comprised of one giant group, the Ulen clan was a union of countless clans, so it was hard to find all those spies. But Jiggle Sohi strategically worked to set up traps and sorted out many spies between them. Surprisingly, those spies were hidden among the main 9 clans of Ulen. But even then, there were still spies to be found. "Since when they placed this many spies within our clan? How long has it been?" This was the most mysterious part. It wasn't understandable as it hadn't been long since the Blade God's 6 martial clan surfaced. Maybe the enemy had been around for quite a long time. "But Miss Jiggle, I am growing suspicious." "About what?" "This invitation for the non-aggression pact. I can't shake the feeling that the Blade God's 6 martial clan is involved." Jiggle Sohi nodded at Peng Chungwen's words. Actually, this was something that all leaders of the Ulen clan had been predicting already. There was no way they would not be wary of the new faction coming into play, when the event traditionally only consisted of 3 main factions. This really seems obvious. Do you think the demonic cult and the alliance of the evil forces will take the risk? Unlike the Ulen clan, the other 2 clans always sent the representatives, rather than their leaders to go with the pact. And with a very high possibility of the 4th faction trying to play tricks, it didn't seem likely that their leaders would come. "No, they will. At least the demonic cult will." "Why do you say that? Do you remember the Crown Prince? I mean, the new lord of the cult?" "Ah, yes, of course. He was quite a man." Peng Chungwen originally thought Yoan was just an ordinary Crown Prince, but he wasn't. The first one to detect the trap and take care of when they were at the cult was Chun Yoan. And they heard that Yoan ascended to the throne not too long after. If I were in his position, I would try to use the trap against them. And I'm sure the current lord will not think of something I can think of. "So, you think the lord will come by himself?" "Yes, as far as I know, he will take this chance." Jiggle Sohi thought very highly of Yoan. They weren't sure what trap was waiting for them, but it was the first time that the Blade God's 6 martial clan was going to reveal themselves in public. If their leader were to appear, then it was their best chance. She was sure that Chun Yoan would surely try to take this chance to use it to his advantage. It was then. "Oh, that's good news, isn't it? Sohi." "Oh." Jiggle Sohi became surprised as she knew who the owner of the voice was. The man with white clothes, in his early 30s, were standing behind Jiggle Sohi. Buso. He was Jiggle Sohi's fiancé, and the eldest son of the Ulen clan's leader, Yen Buso. He was called the future of the forces of justice by many people. Wow, his power increased again. Peng Chungwen became astonished by Yen Buso's appearance. He couldn't feel anything until Yen Buso appeared. If he could stay undetected by Peng Chungwen, a superior master-level warrior, they couldn't be sure as to how much he had grown in power. But the world is quite fair. Peng Chungwen always thought that no one would match Yen Buso in terms of power. But that changed after he returned from the demonic cult. It seemed there was always one stronger than others in the world. "What do you mean?" "I will finally get to meet the man that you, Elder Peng Moyang, spoke so highly of." Jiggle Sohi became surprised. When she first talked about Chun Yoan, Yen Buso didn't seem very interested. But it seems he was actually very interested indeed. Oh, I didn't know you wanted to meet him. Well, he is the man who will live with the next generation. He spoke as he smiled, but he looked very serious. Jegal Sohi became a bit curious, but just considered it a feeling of rivalry. Well, you will get to see him soon enough. Haha, I'm looking forward to it. Chapter 347. You Will Help Me. Part 2. 7 days had passed since Zhu Taikon arrived at the demonic cult. He had been staying within the inner palace during those 7 days. At first, Zhu Taikon was terrified by Chen Youwen and the cultists that he tried to get the answer to the invitation and leave at once. But Youwen said he needed time to think about it and offered Zhu Taikon to rest, so he had to enter the cult without his intention. But unlike his expectation, the demonic cult treated Zhu Taikon with their best. What are they thinking? He couldn't adapt to their changed attitude at first, but soon got used to the treatment he received and enjoyed his 7 days. He even began to hope that maybe the lord of the cult would actually agree to the invitation this time around. I needed some achievement to be noticed. Maybe this might do. When he was first chosen as the messenger, no one from the Imperial palace, including the emperor, hoped the lord of the demonic cult would accept the invitation. The cult and the alliance of evil forces always sent their representatives. So there was no hope in that. But if the lord were to accept the invitation, then it was going to honor the name of the current emperor. His Majesty said negotiations are powerful tools. Perhaps this might even give Zhu Taikon the chance to be recognized for his skill and become the crown prince. It was said that the crown prince would be chosen for this event, so Zhu Taikon had to do whatever he could. That's when someone knocked on the door. Your Highness. It's me, Yan Namgun. Komein. It was late at night when Yan Namgun came to meet him. Yan Namgun bowed and Zhu Taikon offered him a seat. He then spoke with a telepathic message. Commander. Do you think maybe the lord of the cult will accept the invitation this time? Yan Namgun glanced around at the question and unleashed his energy. Zhu Taikon became confused and Yan Namgun spoke. I'm sorry, Your Highness. I put a barrier around the room. You can speak freely. Oh, good. You know me very well. Zhu Taikon then began to speak his thoughts freely. But there was something that they did not know. There was a powerful warrior listening to them speaking on top of the ceiling that Yan Namgun could not sense. At the same time in the medical room of the inner palace, demonic Dr. Baek Jongwoo and other doctors were watching another doctor doing her treatment very carefully. The bald man with a pale face lying on the bed was former Lord Chen Yuzhong. And on his hairless head, an old woman was putting needles on it. It was godly Dr. Gamrosu. She's been putting down needles for over 2 hours already. It's amazing. Baek Jongwoo was astonished. Gamrosu had been working on both herbal and needle techniques to heal Lord Chen Yuzhong's damaged heart, and it shocked all doctors in the room. She sure is the best doctor of Jianghu. Baek Jongwoo had pride in his skill as he was trained in the practice for his entire life, but Gamrosu's technique was at a much higher level. Her well-developed muscle proved to be real as she didn't seem exhausted even after 2 hours of continued treatment. It was hard to believe that she was an old lady. Haha. I should not slack off in training physically. Baek Jongwoo did learn internal energy, but he had not trained physically as much. Now, he learned the need for it. After working on it for a few more minutes, Gamrosu finally stepped back. Demonic doctor, you said? Yes, godly doctor. Oh, I mean, Granny Gam. Gamrosu insisted everyone address her as Granny Gam, except Youwen. Gamrosu gave Baek Jongwoo a golden needle bottle. I need these needles to be taken out after 2 hours, but can you do that for me? I am too exhausted. I need to get some rest. Of course. We will take care of the rest. It was the demonic doctor's responsibility to look after the Lord's family anyway. He was satisfied to have watched godly doctor's treatment from close up. When Gamrosu came out of the room, Youwen was waiting outside with the left and right guardian. How was it? The damage has persisted for a while, but he will be okay. We will have to keep watch, but he will wake up within 2 weeks. It was surely amazing. Gamrosu had done something that Nano, even with the vast knowledge of medical information and MRI, couldn't do. But maybe this was natural as injuries from martial arts had many mysteries that were not known in the future. Thank you, doctor. It's nothing. I just did what I had to do. Gamrosu seemed very exhausted, so Youwen offered her to take a rest. When she returned, someone frantically came over to him. It was Huan Yi. My lord, I found it. Youwen immediately showed interest. Next day afternoon, the Imperial army had finished preparing to leave. All soldiers were lined up by the northern gate, and they were now only waiting for a signal to depart. Countless cultists came out to say farewell, and even Chen Yuan came out to bid farewell to Zhu Taikon. Zhu Taikon bowed and thanked him. "I was treated very nicely, thanks to you. I will tell His Majesty that I was treated well. It's good that you had a good time." The first impression had been the worst, but Zhu Taikon was pleased nonetheless. The only thing he would hope for was Chen Yuan's acceptance to the invitation. A female servant was waiting by Yuan with a scroll sealed with the Lord's seal on the plate she was holding. "So, have you decided, Lord Chen?" Zhu Taikon asked with an anticipating look. It was going to give him a great boost in reputation if the lord of the demonic cult joined, as it had not been possible in history. "I'm sorry, but I will have to send a representative." What? Zhu Taikon frowned. He was so disappointed as he had been very hopeful. Yan Namgun and other Imperial guards also became disappointed. They were treated nicely, so they hoped maybe the lord of the cult was willing to accept the invitation. Yuan bid them farewell until Zhu Taikon got up to the carriage, but he was so disappointed that he did not want to look at the cultists anymore. "Your Highness, shall we leave?" Yan Namgun asked from outside, and Zhu Taikon answered grumpily. "Yeah, whatever. Depart." "Yes, sir." 2,000 soldiers began to leave for the Imperial Palace. Inside the carriage, Zhu Taikon annoyingly looked at the scroll that had Yuan's answer. He kicked the scroll and mumbled, "Damn it. Why did he treat me so nicely if he wasn't even going to come? Ugh." He wanted to unleash his annoyance, but he couldn't do it as he had been the center of embarrassment too much recently. All he could do was to cuss in a small voice. "Damn bastard. What does he think he is? If the Emperor invites him, then he should come right away and..." It was then. What? Zhu Taikon became so shocked that he had to stop cussing out the lord of the cult. He couldn't feel any presence for quite a while after they left, but someone dropped down from the top of the carriage like a feather. Lord CHNNGH. He tried to call out the name, but a powerful energy made him close his mouth. Zhu Taikon looked at the man with disbelief. The man was Chen Yuan. Since when did he enter the carriage? It was unbelievable. And Zhu Taikon was actually talking ill about him. Yuan smiled coldly and sent a telepathic message to Zhu Taikon. "You must have been very mad about me, Your Highness." "Hayek." Zhu Taikon became pale and shook his head side to side frantically. Chapter 348. You Will Help Me. Part 3. It was unbelievable. Chen Yuan was left behind at the northern gate, but it seemed like he had been hiding by the carriage all along. It was hard to believe that Yuan came in when Zhu Taikon entered the carriage. NNNNGH. Can you use telepathic messages? I suppose you can. Zhu Taikon nodded. His mouth was forced to close, so his jaw was hurting. That's when the energy that forced him to close his mouth disappeared. He could have breathed with his nose, but he was too fearful that he became pale and panted through his mouth. Damn it. I guess there's no point in screaming for help. He saw Chen Yuan's monstrous power by his eyes. Yuan was a monster who could wipe out the entire Imperial army if he wanted to. Taikon had to play along. What have I done to go through such trouble? He didn't think he would suffer such an event when he left for the demonic cult. He was, after all, a king who had enormous political power. Since when did you get in the carriage? It's not been that long. Yuan answered vaguely, and Zhu Taikon misunderstood the truth. His power is like a god. He got on the carriage while all that people were watching? Zhu Taikon thought Chen Yuan got on his carriage when he opened the door to get on. But that wasn't true. Yuan actually got in when the Imperial guards were preparing to leave. So, why did you get in my carriage? Zhu Taikon was afraid of getting on Yuan's nerves, but he couldn't figure out why. Yuan had declined to participate and the carriage was now going toward the Empire's capital, so there was no possible explanation. Yuan answered. Of course, I'm going to the Imperial Palace with you. Im Imperial Palace? Zhu Taikon became shocked. He couldn't even guess why a leader of one of the 3 largest factions of Ulen suddenly wanted to go to the Imperial Palace. And Zhu Taikon was just too afraid of Chen Yuan himself. Is it because he heard me cussing him out? It was possible that Yuan had become angry at Taikon, who had been cussing ever since the carriage departed. Zhu Taikon spoke assuringly. Lord Chen. If you are saying that because of what I said, don't be too mad. I was just too sad since you cannot come with me. I see, that's good. I almost got mad because I thought you hate me. Ugh. Those were just simple words, but it was enough to make Taikon afraid. The words seemed to threaten that Yuan might have done something if he felt hostility. Zhu Taikon became lost for words. I'm sorry for spooking you by getting in the carriage, but I will consider it excused. Oh, of course. Actually, it was Ulen who was the rude one for sneaking into the carriage. But Zhu Taikon was so concerned that his cussing would have made Ulen uncomfortable. That he agreed excitedly. Phew. Maybe he was quite naive. Ulen then went into his purpose. Let me cut to the chase. You will help me, Your Highness. It wasn't a request for help. It was a disguised threat. Zhu Taikon became dumbfounded, but he was afraid of Ulen, so he just frowned and did not reply. I am afraid of him, but the word of the royal family should be heavy. That's what Taikon had learned every time from his father, the emperor. The word of the emperor and the royal family was above the law, so the emperor always made sure that all of the royal family should watch their words. What do you want me to do? Ulen became surprised at Taikon, who didn't just agree even when he was afraid. So, he still is in the royal family. Ulen needed to persuade him. He needed Taikon's help at the palace. I will need an explanation. Do you remember the person who impersonated you? Of course he remembered. It was that incident that made Taikon afraid of Ulen. The cult explained that yucking was poisoned before they arrived at the cult, and Yan Namgun agreed also, but no one was sure why the poisoning had been done. Your Highness, you said the Blade God's 6 martial clan will join this ceremony too. Yes. That dead man was a spy from the Blade God's 6 martial clan. What? Zhu Taikon frowned at the unexpected piece of information from Ulen. He was curious as to how yucking was poisoned, but he still couldn't believe that a low-ranking official of the palace was actually a spy. I will explain about what happened at the cult first. Ulen then began to explain a simplified version of how the Blade God's 6 martial clan appeared in Ulen, and the incidents that happened at the cult. Ulen also told him the existence of a centipede that was embedded in the person to avoid spilling information. By the gods, they do that kind of thing just to prevent the information from being leaked. Zhu Taikon became shocked to know about the centipede. It was quite effective, but it seemed to be on the very extreme side. They are extremists. After an explanation, Ulen went into the important issue at hand. I asked you to help me, but this will help you too, Your Highness. Help me? How? Actually, there is still a spy remaining within your forces here besides that yucking. What? Quiet. Zhu Taikon almost spoke out loud but quickly grabbed his mouth to stop. He was so shocked to hear that there had been a spy and that spy still remained within his forces. Is he lying, he thought, but there was no need for such a powerful man to lie about such a thing. If that was true, then Zhu Taikon had to thank him. If what you say is true, then we must arrest them. Taikon didn't want to play on top of the hands of these spies any longer. Ulen shook his head. Chapter 349. You will help me. Part 4. Why? If we do that, we won't be able to find spies within the palace. That was Ulen's true purpose. The reason why Ulen got in the carriage was to find spies among the palace. The Blade God's 6 martial clan had placed spies among all factions of Ulen to proceed with their plans. If the Imperial palace was to be involved, it was going to be more complicated. That's why Ulen wanted to get rid of them first before that happened. This man wants to get the roots out from it. Zhu Taikon truly felt afraid of Chen Ulen. Zhu Taikon only thought about the spies that he can see, but Ulen wanted to remove the roots. He was going to be a terrible enemy to have. Is it right to bring him to the palace? Helping Ulen sneak into the palace like this was a very complicated issue. If things went that way and Taikon was revealed of doing so, it was bound to anger the emperor. And this man was none other than the lord of the demonic cult. Maybe it was an act of setting a monster loose in his backyard. Ulen then continued to seal the deal. Don't you want to become the crown prince? Zhu Taikon became shocked. How did he? Ulen knew something that Taikon only spoke about to Yan Namgun. Yan Namgun said no one was listening, so Taikon became shocked to hear it from Ulen. If we get those spies within the palace, I will hand it over to you so you can claim all the glory. Are you serious? Of course. My goal is to remove them, not be awarded by the emperor. Zhu Taikon became hesitant. This was a very tempting offer. If he really found the spies hidden inside the Imperial palace, it was going to be a very huge achievement indeed. If I can do that, then maybe I will truly become closer to the crown prince. There was a month left until the ceremony. Taikon needed something big to appease the emperor. Taikon then asked Ulen, "What will you do if I refuse your request?" "Well, I will leave that to your imagination." Zhu Taikon felt a chill running down his spine. This meant Ulen was going to do what he wanted even if Taikon refused. Taikon then nodded. Well, I have no choice. Let's just think that I'm using him for my own benefit. I won't lose anything, Zhu Taikon thought to himself. Yuan smiled. Great. Hope we have a great time while we go then. Huh? Zhu Taikon frowned. He couldn't think of this when he accepted. The two of them had to stay together for the remainder of the trip. Oh no. Imperial city of Kaifeng. It was the city with a population of over 500,000 people, one of largest cities in the empire. The giant outer wall of the city wall was about 10 times large as the demonic cult's castle, and it took 2 hours to get to the center of the city. At the center, there was the lavish dragon palace, built with golden roofs that showed authority of the royal family. Zhu Taikon's imperial army was now passing through the southern gate of the dragon palace. Palace guards raised their spears high up into the air to welcome Taikon's carriage entering the palace. After they entered, the carriage had to stop at one point. The carriage was no longer allowed from this point on. Zhu Taikon got out of the carriage. He looked very weary and exhausted after the 2 weeks of long travel. Finally. I'm finally here. He had wished to arrive sooner while on the trip. They had to stay together for almost 7 days until they got to the Habuk region. It's astonishing, however. Zhu Taikon glanced at the Imperial Guard standing behind Yan Namgun. He was Chen Youan, who had the skin mask of Imperial Guard Ihan. We will keep him in the northern region of Honam until we are done with our business at the palace. Real Ihan was now staying at the demonic cult's outpost in the northern Honam region. Youan had prepared for everything for 7 days while Zhu Taikon stayed in the cult. Nobody noticed. Even Yan Namgun didn't notice that the man was Youan. That was natural as Youan used Nano's ability to mimic Ihan's voice. Other than tend to guard His Highness, all of you are dismissed. Stand by for further orders. Yan Namgun ordered the soldiers to be dismissed. That's good. Youan, who had been walking by Yan Namgun, was smoothly chosen to be within the 10 members to guard. It was good that he stayed close. Zhu Taikon had to go over to the Emperor's palace to report while he was only allowed a few Imperial guards to guard him. He tags along without me having to worry about him. Zhu Taikon became astonished. He was thinking if he should assign him to stay by him, but that was not needed. Zhu Taikon then headed toward the Emperor's palace. It sure is the Imperial Palace. As they walked in, Youan became astonished by the lavish decor and buildings. The demonic cult's inner palace was nice, but it was no match for this place. There were many decorations and landscaping done all over the place, and there were even small ponds to look at. Is it that place? Youan then saw a large palace in front. In the gate of the yard wall around the building, there were 30 men with blue robes, with one man with more lavish ornaments over him with heavy makeup standing in the front. He reminds me of Elder Huan. It seemed like this group of men were eunuchs. Ha! East Spear. Yan Namgun sighed at the sight of these men. These eunuchs were one of strongest organizations along with Imperial guards within the Imperial Palace, called East Spear. How come eunuchs all learned martial arts? All of these eunuchs learned martial arts, with their leader at the superior master level.